And welcome back to another episode of TWiP Weddings. My name is Bruce Clark, and this week we've got a special guest. I'm joined by Mr. Corwin Hiebert. Corwin is the author of Living the Dream, Putting Your Creativity to Work and Getting Paid. And he's also the creator of the Business Action Planner for photographers. So this week, we're going to sit down with Corwin. We're going to talk about some of the key management and marketing principles that can help wedding photographers become less stressed and more successful doing what they love. But before we get into the show, we want to remind everyone how you can interact with us and how you can participate in the show. We got a bunch of different ways to interact with us. First off, you can visit the website at thisweekinphoto.com/weddings. There you'll find the show notes for each episode, and those will contain links to everything we talk about on the show. You can also leave your comments and feedback for us in the comment section. If you do have a question or a suggestion for a future topic, you can email us. Our email address is twipwed@thisweekinphoto.com. Or if you prefer using social media, just add the hashtag TWIPWed to your post, and we'll keep an eye out for those posts as well. And if you want to follow us, we're on Instagram. Just follow us at TWIPWed. And we just set up a brand new Facebook group. So just head on over to facebook.com/groups/TWIPWed and feel free to jump in there, participate in the group. We'll post up anything that we run across that we think might be useful for you as wedding photographers. So with that, I want to jump into the show and welcome Mr. Corwin Hiebert to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Bruce.
Hey, thanks for joining us. So for those who don't know Corwin or who aren't familiar with Corwin, Corwin is a successful small business owner whose boutique firm Tandem Agency. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Tandem, yeah.
Tandem Agency.
With the silent E.
It's the silent E and an oompa on the E's, no, or a umlaut on the. And you guys provide management and marketing services to creative entrepreneurs. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we're a small group. We do professional services for creative entrepreneurs, mostly for photographers. We do things, whether it's from the business administration side to legal to production, through to marketing, websites, email campaigns, portfolio work, all that kind of stuff. We don't do any of the actual creative work. That's what our clients are in charge of. I don't push camera buttons, and if I can help it, I try not to hold light discs because I'm pretty horrible at. I'm pretty useless when it comes to that kind of work. But we're in the background. We take care of all the business stuff, so our clients can focus on being creative and being productive and good at what they're good at.
Awesome. So for those maybe who aren't familiar with you or your work, tell us a little bit about yourself. Who is Corwin Hiebert, and how did you come to be running the business that you are?
Well, I made it up. That was the easy part. I am a reluctant photographer. If I was to ever write an ebook on photography, I would call it Dark, Blurry, and Awkward: The Confessions of a Reluctant Photographer. So photography for me is a craft of play and fun, and I spent a lot of time in the dark room when I was younger. But for me, it's been all about the business. I really enjoy good business management. I really enjoy helping creative people make a living doing what they love. And I get really excited creating, production plans and reading contracts and, or wrestling with lawyers, not physically wrestling, though sometimes I've wanted to. When CRA or the IRS call me, I'm all game. Let's talk. I love that kind of stuff. I love diving into the guts of creative work. And I kind of came to it quite by accident. I actually was involved in a lot of creative, a lot of event production and on the creative side. And after a few years, I realized, it wasn't really my event clients that I cared about, but the creative people that I got to hire to put on, produce, and photograph and make these events come alive. So after about 5 years of that, doing it in the corporate world, I just basically made up my own job and said, you know what, I think some of these creative people I was working with, I knew I could help them. I knew I could make their life better. I knew I could help them so they were being more creative, having more fun, getting paid better for what they do. And so I kind of just made up this idea of having a management firm that just works with creative people, and it's grown from there. It's been 9 years now.
Wow, that's awesome. And you have, one of your clients is probably most of the audience of This Week in Photo is probably familiar with David Duchemin, and you help him with the business side of things, right?
Yeah, and our working relationship started out of a really solid friendship, and we were just, friends and creative collaborators, if you will. And he went on a trip, this is about 6.5, 7 years ago. he went on a trip and asked me if I could watch his inbox for him while he was going to be off the grid. And I said, sure, no problem. He went off for 2 weeks. He came home, and I refused to give him his inbox back because I was convinced I was doing a better job of handling his email communications and his clients and that kind of stuff better than he was. So he just said, fine, keep it.
It's yours.
You deal with my email. I'll just make photographs. And so since then, we've done a lot of work together. And his work, obviously, for those of that know him primarily probably through his writing. And Craft and Vision is his publishing company. And it was about 6 years ago that we were hiking, and he's asked me, he goes, have you ever heard of an ebook? And I said, yeah, ebooks, they're on their way out. No one will read ebook anymore. Anyway, so we started playing with that idea. He put out a couple PDFs, and next thing you know, he's got a publishing company with 130 products, and it's quite the resource. Craft and Vision is for photographers. So it's a big part of my work, helping him with his business and all the things that he's got going on. But it's built on a great friendship, so it's really, really fun.
Awesome. So you mentioned that you're not a photographer, but you're pretty entrenched in the industry. So what are some of the ways that you help photographers?
Yeah, I think ultimately when I take on a photographer as a managed client, so that's someone that I'm going above and beyond the role of consulting and sort of guiding them through some of those initial phases. When I roll up my sleeves and actually represent them and their businesses, it means that I'm diving into anything outside of the creative production. When one of my clients wants to make a pitch, he wants to submit a proposal, I would work with them through all the details of a proposal, both from the the interpretation of their creative work, how it fits with the brief, what their offerings are, how their pricing gets built. I spend a lot of time dealing with money, both the collection of creating, sort of the manufacturing, all facets of how money gets communicated, how it gets collected, how it gets connected to the value of creative work. So, that's for my managed clients. But for those that I work with that I don't handle, I don't represent them fully, it means I get a chance to dive in. Sometimes it's a parachuting. I parachute in, try to find their, discover what their biggest business issues are, provide some direction, ideas. Usually it comes down to approaches and helping them take a better approach to making better business decisions so they can make more money, so they can ask for more money, and they can do the kind of things that make their businesses more attractive. So I find that my world is split between sort of, full representation and then that consulting sort of guidance side where I get a chance to really help photographers kind of grow and manage their own businesses. So I'm a little bit, there's a little bit of duality going on there with my work.
So you're sort of like an assassin that we can like parachute in, get in, do all the stuff we don't want to deal with.
It's Mennonite, so I'm not sure assassin's a good word, but ooh, I like that.
Navy SEAL, maybe more like a Navy SEAL. We'll parachute you in.
Yeah. Oh, that's better.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Deal with all the stuff we don't want to do.
Yeah, that's right. No, I spend a lot of time, focusing on and addressing business issues, and sometimes that's money stuff, sometimes that's marketing pieces, sometimes that's taxes, sometimes it's legal. It means that, for example, one great example is when I'm working with a photographer and they're dealing with a contract or an agreement of some kind, most photographers kind of glaze over when they look at a long contract. It's just, especially when there's legalese that's pretty thick.
Most clients do too.
Yes, well, exactly. And of course there's lawyers, and we have a great lawyer that we work with all the time, but sometimes you still need a bit of a translator between lawyer and photographer. Yeah. And so I get to sort of be that kind of an interpreter between business language and creative language. So it's kind of fun having that role of being sort of that, you call me an assassin, that specialist that can handle things outside of the creative work.
Yeah, so I think a lot of times even helping to find a lawyer who can specialize and work with creatives, because it's a different field of law, and a lot of times, right, you're dealing with copyright and intellectual property and a lot of things that are different from maybe not all lawyers maybe are equipped to handle that or can specialize with creative.
Yeah, very few are, and very few have the sensibilities that I think connect well to creative work and especially photographic work. So I think when you have a lawyer that can handle that and understand it and make sense of those types of issues, it's actually really fun because you kind of see some of the opportunities and some of the benefits behind really good legal structure. So that's one of the elements that I get to deal with. When it comes to wedding photographers, I really enjoy helping wedding photographers work through their pricing. It's probably one of the wedding photography as a niche within the photography world is a really great example. I point a lot of other photographers to successful wedding photographers and say, look, they have packages, they have set pricing, they have clear, distinct connection between what they offer, what their value is, and how much it costs. And a lot of photographers would learn a lot by taking cues from the successful wedding photographers in their local market. So I really enjoy digging into wedding work. I think it's really interesting work.
Yeah. That's interesting. So what do you think are some of the biggest differences, say, between creative entrepreneurs running a small business versus, say, a traditional small business where maybe they're selling a tangible product, they're selling a widget or something like that? What are some of the biggest differences you see between those types of, creative entrepreneurs?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'd say that the biggest difference is there is no muse being tickled or coddled or dealt with in other types of entrepreneurial efforts. A photographer has to wrestle with their creative vision simultaneously with all these other business and marketing elements that they're dealing with on a daily basis, and that is a challenge which I don't think a lot of other kinds of entrepreneurs have to deal with. I think it's a real unique position that a photographer brings to the table, that not only am I going to do services for you, not only am I going to produce deliverables that are like products for you, but I'm going to do it in a unique, creative, inspired, way, all in the moment. I mean, that the on-demand creativity is a monster all on its own. And the person that wants to open an A&W franchise or start up Bob's Towing or sell widgets of some kind, they don't wrestle with that. They don't cry themselves to sleep because someone didn't like something. Whereas a photographer probably does, probably will. It's intimate. The intimacy of creative photographic work really sets it apart from other types of entrepreneurial efforts.
Yeah, you definitely are open to, you see all kinds of people. I hear this all the time, and, from other photographers where, the bride didn't like her wedding photos for one reason or another. And sometimes they have something else going on in their life and it was just something to complain about, or sometimes they just their vision didn't jive with the photographer's vision. And it can become very emotional and very stressful when somebody comes back to you and basically says, I hate the work that you did for me.
Yeah.
It can be very personal. I'm sure it's like that with designers and other kind of, creative entrepreneurs.
Yeah, there's definitely some commonality with other types of creative work and, kind of art-based work for sure. So it's, that's I have a lot of respect for talented creative people that are willing to put themselves out there in the marketplace in that way. It's one of the reasons why I get asked, with all the business work and consulting work I do, I get asked to get involved in other industries. I got asked the other day to consider getting involved in the coaching industry, and it came from a trusted friend, and I really value his insight. But I actually had to say, you know what, I can't do it because I don't care. I care about artists. I care about creative people. So if I'm gonna, wrestle, if my business is gonna wrestle and go through the fight of, the entrepreneurial effort, I want it to produce and help creative people. So it's all I care about is really great creative work. So that's my thing.
Yeah. So you mentioned kind of pricey, you enjoy the pricing and getting into all of that. What are you noticing any trends out there, be it among wedding photographers? I mean, that's our primary audience, but really any photographers. Are you noticing any particular trends these days in terms of pricing? With, we hear a lot about, there's so many people entering the market and so many people becoming, photographers, and they see weddings as that one way where they can sort of jump in and make a quick buck. Totally. And it's forcing, sort of downward pressure on all the pricing. What are you seeing out there? What are you hearing?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the barrier to entry is falling rapidly. I know a successful wedding photographer that shot a wedding last summer on his iPhone, and he killed it. Now, of course, he's talented, so the tool of it all is less important than the fact that he knows what he's doing. But the barriers to entry are really low now, and so yes, there is, in a sense, potentially more competition to consider. But the trend that I'm seeing is sort of the casual entrepreneur, the casual freelancer, the person that is not depending on their photography income as their primary income generator, they are all in a rush to sort of, kind of keep their prices low and cheap and sort of get gigs no matter what the cost. And sort of there is a slide down in pricing. But I'm also seeing on the other side that those that have some credibility, that have established some rapport, they've got good portfolios, they got a good work history, some of the referrals are starting to come in, they're starting to push up on the pricing. They're starting to sort of say, you know what, instead of 3,500, I'm going up to 5, or I'm going up to 7, or I'm going to 10,000. Or they're sort of saying, you know what, I'm going to only do destination weddings, I'm only going to shoot for a year, and I'm even more money. And it's just, there's this parity that's happening right now. So though I think, yes, the largest segment of wedding photographers, there's this slide towards lower pricing in order to stay competitive. The ones that I see that are successful and they're happiest, they're holding strong on good pricing, or they're growing their pricing up in connection to understanding what their value is. And that's one of the things that, regardless of photography, the niche, photographers have a tendency to associate time with their pricing. And outside of very few instances where event coverage, where time might be one of the elements of, say, a scope of work, a photographer is always giving more than their time. They're giving their creative vision, their unique perspective, and that's what drives value. And what's really funny, now a lot of clients or prospects don't read endorsements. After one or two, they sort of, they assume, okay, the person likes that person and whatever. But I read them. And one thing that I notice amongst, especially wedding photographers, is that brides and families, they endorse the photographer, and guess what? They almost never endorse the photographs themselves. Mm-hmm. They endorse the human. They endorse the personality, the character, the work ethic, the style, just the way that they conducted themselves. Their professionalism gets commented on more than the work. So if you think about how your value is driven, everyone says, look at my portfolio, look how talented I am. My pictures should speak for themselves. I should be able to charge a big rate, a big dollar. I'm like, your pictures have very little to do with the perceived value. Value comes in through so many other facets. So, anyway, that's just something I've been seeing amongst in wedding photography.
Yeah, no, that is an interesting observation for sure. And I think we see that a lot. I mean, very, very seldom do people just fall on our website and say, "Oh, we love all your photos. We want to hire you," right? They want to meet with you. They want to learn about your personality, and that's the biggest thing that when we connect with a client and find there's common ground and there's a connection there, and that's why they hire us. And we ask them later on, like, "Why did you hire us?" Maybe they met with a couple of photographers. 9 times out of 10, it generally has nothing to do with our photography. Mm-hmm. I mean, they like our photography, but it's usually because they liked our personalities and they connected with us in some way, shape, or form. And then, like you say, that's an interesting observation because, I think if, we look back at some of our referrals and reviews, a lot of it is, that they loved working with us. We made them feel comfortable. Mm-hmm. we made their friends and their family feel comfortable. Yeah, that's definitely an interesting observation. So, I want to ask you, what would sort of be your best piece of advice for someone maybe who's an emerging photographer who's just kind of coming onto the scene, and they want to take this a little further and build a business around it, get paid doing what they love to do?
Mm-hmm. Well, the number one piece of advice I give, regardless of someone's talent or experience, is always reminding them, make sure to work on your photography business. It's not just about making photographs. And right now, there is this unbelievable trend to whore yourself out to Lightroom or to your editing. And there's a lot of talk about, post-production. And I know it has its value, but, business is not earned through, knowing everything and rocking Lightroom. The elements of one's business require constant effort, almost daily effort, or at least regular effort. And a lot of photographers kind of, they come into their entrepreneurial endeavor because they want to make money doing something that they love. So they figure, well, if I can just make more photographs, well, I will love doing that. And that's a good idea to make money. The problem is that unless you're addressing a business need and you know what business issues you're solving in the marketplace. Now, I know that sounds very corporate, but the reality is that unless you're meeting needs from people that are going to give you money, then you don't actually have a business. You just have a hobby that you might make a little bit of money at. So for an emerging photographer, someone that wants to sort of change the way that they're doing it, they want to, you know, grow what they're doing, they've got to carve out time to work on their business, not just in it. Because ultimately, if you're just a button pusher, camera button pusher, or, you know, mouse button pusher, then you're a technician, and that's not entrepreneurship. That's, you know, that's being a worker, not a business owner. And I think that there are a lot of elements of good business management and good business marketing, good business ownership that require, you know, some serious work. So I love it, whether it's bookkeeping and sort of saying, okay, you know what, I'm carving out this weekend to sit down with my shoebox of receipts, and I'm just going to go through it, and it's going to suck, and I'm probably going to drink, you know, a little bit more wine than I usually do, but I'm going to get through it. That's what I like to hear photographers say, that they're carving out time to work on their business, because the stress that comes and the anxiety that comes from a poorly managed business, that'll suck the creative life right out of you. That will kill your opportunities. It will kill your energy. It'll make you desperate. It'll make you frustrated. It'll end up, I see a lot of martyrs in the creative realms, because they feel like their creative talent owes them something. And that isn't the case, especially when they haven't put in the time. So my encouragement always, carve out time in your calendar to work on your business, things other than clicking, you know, in Lightroom or clicking on your camera.
Yeah, I find a lot of photographers tend to use the excuse that, you know, oh, I'm a creative, I'm not good at the business stuff. So they just ignore it completely. They just push it all to the side and say, I'm just going to ignore it, and I'll wait until the tax man calls, or I don't have any money in my bank account now, I got to figure out where it all went. Like they kind of make, do you find they make a lot of excuses just because they use that I'm a creative as a bit of a crutch?
Yeah, there's definitely a scapegoat there. And it's sort of there's a bit of an expectation that I think, you know, the outside world puts on creative people, and it just assumes, well, they're creative, so they sort of, you know, they just write them off in that way. But I think creative people do the same to themselves and kind of just say, well, you know what, I'm not very good at that. You know, we all have to do things that we're not good at. I think it's important to focus on doing the things that you can do, and those that you are actually not capable of, like you don't have the skill or experience to do, then that's when you have to pull in other people. But you at least, you know, you have to try. You have to, you know, make the effort. I would, for example, like when someone comes to me with a lot of business issues, and if I don't feel like they've even attempted to put in the time, I won't work with them. You know, I might steer them towards some resources and, you know, make some referrals to some professional services that can help them. But, you know, I won't manage someone that is, you know, so disorganized and so chaotic that they actually don't have their head screwed on straight. So it's something where when someone can work on their business and put in the time, they're going to be a lot happier. Again, even if all that time is spent realizing, okay, I'm really actually not very good at this, or this takes me too long. But then you can address that as a business need and say, I'm going to hire someone, I'm going to work with someone, I'm going to, you know, find some other way to deal with this.
Yeah, I think one great example of that, as we talked in a previous episode just about outsourcing your editing as an example. You know, there's a lot of photographers that, like I say, they get sucked into that black hole of Lightroom and spend so many hours in there. And really, at the end of the day, that's something that they could outsource, because there's a lot of great companies out there that are, you know, now doing it. You know, Photographers Edit and Shoot.edit and other companies that can do a fantastic job, and they can use, you know, that time to work, like you say, on their business instead of always feeling like having to work in the business. So that's a, you know, an example of something that could be potentially outsourced. It's tough because it's that creative piece, and some people don't want to let that go, right? They don't want to let their baby go and let somebody else work on their baby. But you have to ask yourself, is my time worth doing something else? Where could I be building and growing my business and doing more of what I love, which maybe is shooting, than stuck behind the computer all day? And
so, and maybe there's tools as well, you know, tools like FreshBooks or PhotoShelter or MailChimp, or some of these things that, on the front end, sort of getting them set up and organized and getting familiar with the workspace, that might take a little bit of time. But you know, they're all fairly intuitive, and once you use them, they make those parts of your business go a lot smoother. I know a photographer that got canned from a reoccurring gig because they kept sending invoices that were incorrect invoice numbers, wrong calculations, whatever. And their direct buyer loved them, but the buyer was sitting in a meeting, and someone from accounting said, "Oh, that photographer? Oh, I can't stand that guy. He always buggers his invoices." So around the table, everyone looked at each other and kind of went, "Well, if our financial controller is irritated, well, let's not work with them." So theirs are, has nothing to do with their talent, nothing to do with their work, actually has nothing to do with their pricing. It had all to do with mismanaged invoices. So why wouldn't a photographer like that use FreshBooks or another system that makes invoicing simple, clear, and error, or a lot harder to make errors in? So yeah, there's always ways, whether it's people or tools, to sort of meet those business needs, so the photographer, can focus on being creative and ultimately, selling their creativity to people that need what they're doing.
Yeah. So speaking of tools, that's a great segue. You've developed a great tool. Tell me about the Business Action Planner.
All right. So the Business Action Planner. I built the Business Action Planner out of a consulting practice service that I had for a couple years. My wife Eileen and I created this very in-depth process that we would walk a photographer through the effort of building a good, solid, work-in-progress business plan. However, that was getting very expensive for our clients, and it was a lot of work, and we realized that of course, good business planning takes a long period of time. And so as we started to do this, and we started to get too busy, we're like, you know what, we can't, this isn't scalable. What do we do? What did this monster we created? So we actually stopped offering it, and we took time away to create it as a self-help tool and something that someone could download and work with on their own. And of course, we can make that a lot more affordable for a lot more people. So it came out of a really rich consulting experience that we knew that we could probably pour all of our heart, soul, blood, sweat, and tears into something that someone could download and use kind of on their own terms. But the spirit of the Business Action Planner is to make a business plan for your photography career that is perpetual, that is always a work in progress, that in little bite-sized pieces, you can work on the most important parts of your business in a digital way. So we've leveraged the amazing powers of Evernote, the free version of Evernote, so that people can upload the planning tool into Evernote, and then on any device, they can, whether they have 9 seconds, 19 minutes, or 9 hours, they can do a little bit of work on their business plan. So the business planner itself is about 33 notes inside an Evernote notebook. But we created a guidebook, which is 344 pages long, and everything that's in Evernote is also in this PDF guidebook, including pages people can print off if they're sort of a Luddite, a technophobe, and Evernote's just too much tech for them. Then no problem, it's all right there in the ebook. And we threw in some really great worksheets, like one of my favorite one that we threw in there actually is a cost of living, cost of business, budgeting worksheet, because a lot of photographers, their money, their life, what they bring in, what they spend, it's integrated into their life. Maybe they even have it separate accounts or whatever, but the truth is they're spending everything that they're earning. And so their life is very connected to their money. So we created a budgeting worksheet that actually takes all those facets, all those elements into play, and makes budgeting a lot less scary for the freelance photographer. So it's stuff like that the Action Planner Toolkit kind of all dumps into one big giant download.
Cool. Yeah, it was one of the things that I really loved about the product. Is it was probably the first product that I've seen that was developed for Evernote. And I love Evernote. I live and breathe every day in Evernote. It's the tool that I use. I think we've made it a pick in at least one episode or more. It's such a valuable resource for us. So a little bit about the business planner itself. Would this be targeted at any level of photographer, or would it be more for emerging photographers who are just starting up their business, or who would be the primary audience for this?
Yeah, it asks really, really hard questions, candidly. And it's for the photographer that has they've made, I kind of joke about, $1 to $1 million, but basically that they have started making some steps. Or they're hitting the reset button. Basically, they're in that entrepreneurial mindset, and that they want to move forward. If someone like a student, someone who's either young or really fresh into the idea, and they haven't been working with any clients, they have no context of sort of the business building effort, then the Action Planner is probably a little too far beyond them. But it's for those that have done a little bit or a fair bit of work. We just ran a boot camp, business action planning boot camp in Vancouver here, and we had 4 of the 12 people we had in this very intimate boardroom long table session. 4 of them were full-time commercial shooting photographers that just needed to hit the reset button. They were in too deep. They were pushing buttons all day long and weren't making really strategic steps to growing their career. And they had been doing, some of them had been doing it for almost 20 years. But the action planner was just what they needed to kind of, clear away the cobwebs, kind of refocus and address some of their biggest business issues. So it's been kind of fun seeing it be highly applicable to both that kind of emerging photographer all the way to the pro.
Nice. I want to get into the boot camps in a moment, but before I do, maybe take us through like an example of a section that's in the business action planner, and kind of what would somebody expect to see in that?
Yeah, we dedicated one section to identity, and sort of picking apart the elements that create the visual cues, the visual triggers, both from the aesthetic side of like brand marks, logos, color palettes, to the type of language that you use to speak about yourself and about your business, all the way through to your unique selling or unique value proposition, and sort of clarifying the things that actually drive your business forward. So the identity section of the business action planner is a fairly in-depth workflow to make sure that you've addressed all the elements that go into communicating your talent beyond your photographs. So I speak very little in the action planner about actual photographs outside of some portfolio elements. I really encourage photographers to focus on the parts of their business that they have not addressed, or not addressed very well. And I've been exposed to enough photography businesses that I kind of have a sense of, where to point people. So the identity section was really fun to sort of break down. And the workbook in its entirety has 188 action items that I've actually written out and sort of said, you know what, do this, try this. Really, I've tried to pour as much insight as I could into it. And on top of that, 132 questions. I call them kickstart questions, because what happens is when I ask someone to okay, let's evaluate your brand. Well, that's one very large question, which typically paralyzes most of us, right? Yep. So then I break that question down into 5, 6 more manageable questions to help get there. So it was really fun to sort of really break down each element in light of a photography business, not just any kind.
Cool. And it's designed to be it's a working kind of ongoing document, right? That's the other beautiful thing I liked about it. It's not just this static thing that you're sort of like, okay, I'm done, on to the next thing, right? It's designed to sort of be a living, breathing, organic resource, right?
Yeah, that's right. I should have said it earlier, but we created this whole thing, the whole action planning approach, because we are tired of seeing traditional business planning efforts fail. Both they're creating a traditional, like cover page, table of contents, executive summary, and then all the bits and bobs that you normally hear of. Bits and bobs. It's a technical term. You wouldn't expect you to understand. A traditional business plan is great if you are trying to prove your business idea to a stakeholder, like a bank or a lender or a partner of some kind, or if you're trying to reassure someone in your personal life that you're not crazy. So I often say that if you need a business plan to convey to, say, someone in your domestic life that you're not crazy, a printed off traditional business plan can maybe help you do that. But a lot of business planning isn't useful. If it gets done, which is be a miracle, it gets shoved in a drawer, left on a hard drive somewhere, and it doesn't actually drive day-to-day decisions. The action planner approach is to always find things to work on every day or every week or every month in sort of an ongoing way. So I kind of call it, it's the business plan for you, not really for anyone else. It's not, you're not going to share it. You're not going to start, putting stuff on your blog or your website. This is for you to work on your business.
Nice. So talk to me about the boot camp. So this is something that's kind of new, that's kind of grown out of the business action planners. You're kind of taking that next step and doing some in-person boot camps with folks.
Yeah, we've been just this spring, we've been getting together small groups of photographers. We keep them small on purpose to get them asking hard questions, kind of bring a little bit of collaborative discussion to the group, and it gives me a chance to speak to the business needs of a photographer in a more specific way. And we walk through the parts of the business action planner that I feel are sort of the most, especially for the engaged photographer, the one that's kind of moving forward, has some clients, has some work. They're sort of they have some momentum, and we address the items that are of the biggest need. So we talk in that workshop. We do talk about identity, talk about marketing, we talk about branding, we talk about pricing, we talk about proposals. You know, those are the big gears that we tackle in the boot camp. So we also do breakouts. So of course I'm not a photographer, so I bring in photographers to facilitate, you know, conversation, to make sure there's that. I really enjoy a kind of a family attitude when it comes to learning about photography businesses. And I've had people tell me before that they don't like learning and dealing with the business of photography within their own market because they're worried about competition. I suppose that could be the case, but I've never seen it. I've always seen people, you know, thrive as a result of being open and honest and encouraging, and kind of the sort of the, hey, we're all in this together. It seems to be the way that, you know, successful people roll. So why should, you know, anyone else, you know, feel otherwise? So yeah, these boot camps are really fun. They're 1 or 2 days long, depending on what the format is, but it's been pretty cool.
Awesome. What now? This show, we're recording this a little bit early before the show goes out. So by the time this show gets published, we're gonna have already had you here in Edmonton, which is gonna be awesome. So I'm really looking forward to that boot camp here in Edmonton. What can people look forward to in terms of future boot camps for the fall and kind of the winter time? Is that still in the planning stages?
There is stuff in the plan. And prior to Edmonton, I'm actually going to be in New Zealand, doing it there in Queenstown, which is really cool.
Awesome.
But then I'll do Edmonton, and I'm going to probably do Grand Prairie and Calgary as well, kind of rock prairies. But it looks like I'll be in Chicago next year. And on the Business Action Planner website, there's always going to be new workshops hosted. Basically, there's people, you know, from kind of cities all over North America and kind of beyond that are reaching out saying, hey, we'd love to see the Action Planner Bootcamp come to our city. And so there's lots of conversations going on right now. So I wouldn't be able to, other than there's going to be a Vancouver one in late September, which we're just about to release now. And then we'll probably do a Vancouver one, it's going to be 2 days in Vancouver. So people are kind of flying in from all over, because Vancouver is a great place to visit when you have a couple days workshop, couple days of photographing and kind of enjoying the fall weather. But that'll be this fall. And we're going to be kind of choosy. Or not doing some grand, I'm no Scott Kelby. I'm not going to do some grand tour. I have clients and other work to do, but when I can unplug for a weekend, it's fun to do these boot camps. So we will do 1 or 2 every term, every sort of season, and hopefully we'll always be able to do one, out and about in the world beyond Vancouver.
Yeah, that's great. I think photographers are always looking for that business, that business content for sure. There's so much, resources out there now for lighting and posing and the technical side of photography and the creative side. But, I think we're starting to see the emergence of more of the business side of it. But I think this is a fabulous resource.
Yeah. Well, it's a dog-eat-dog world.
It is. Yeah, that's for sure. So if people wanted to learn more about the Business Action Planner and the boot camps, where would they go?
Yeah, it's pretty simple. Just go to businessactionplanner.com and it's all right there.
Nice and simple. Perfect. And as always, we'll put links to that in the show notes for this episode. Excellent. Well, we're certainly excited to have you come to Edmonton and definitely looking forward to it. So
excellent. I can't wait.
Yeah. So before we kind of continue on, I want to move on to our next segment, which is our listener question. So each episode, we choose a listener question to answer on the show. And this week, we picked a question from Cindy. We thought it would be right up your alley, Corwin. And Cindy's asking, she says, she's only a few years into my photography business, and I'm struggling trying to identify my ideal target market. I feel like I have to take every job that comes my way in order to make ends meet, but I feel like that is holding me back from clearly defining and attracting the ideal client. Any suggestions on how to go about identifying and attracting my ideal client? And I think this is something that you wrote about in something that's going to be my pick this week, which is the Living the Dream. But I'm going to let you go ahead and take this question for Cindy.
Yeah. Cindy is asking a very good question. I wish more photographers would take seriously the effort that should go into target market planning, ideally target audience planning, and who that ideal client is. So her question is, how does she go about choosing that target market? one of the things that a photographer brings to the table is their experience and their interests and their passions. What happens when a photographer's passion is making photographs, that isn't helpful enough when it comes to making the connection to a target market. I know a photographer from California who, as a talented photographer, kind of stumbled across, okay, she has a dog, she loves dogs, she photographed dogs, but one day at the beach ended up coming across a dog surfing competition. And her dog runs out in the water, and they strap her dog onto a surfboard. They have some fun with it. And all of a sudden she discovers, you know what? I love photographing dogs in the water. And she niched out on photographing dogs on surfboard, dogs in water, dogs at play in the beach. It became her very narrow focus target market. And ultimately what happens when a photographer makes that type of decision, they're creatively, they're freed up because they can just focus on, one type, whether it's subject matter or aesthetic or moments or the type of setting or the experience that they're trying to create. And they can repeat that over and over and over again. What that does is that builds trust. So ultimately, when a photographer is looking to clarify their target market, they should be looking to work in a space where they feel they bring some experience, some connection, that they're interested in that, whether it's a hobby, an interest, a type of industry. For example, another example is I know a photographer that works in natural resource. He does a lot of chainsaw work up in northern Canada. So he's and he's always around, forestry and mining and all this stuff. And he kind of figured, well, do I only do that kind of photography because I kind of understand the oil field, I understand some of that thing? Well, that's true, except one of the things that connects him to the land is that he rips around on a dirt bike, that he's got a 4x4 truck, that he loves snowmobiling, that he loves dirt biking. And so his connection to his target market actually was divided between the natural resource industry and adventure sports. The common element was outside, things that were dangerous and outside, and that became his brand. And those two very different target markets had a connection to him as a human, to him as a creative person, to him as an athlete, to him as an adventurer. So the target marketing effort should always be based on sort of what gets you excited beyond photography. Where do you feel like you bring some rapport, some experience, some interest? And then I definitely, if you can augment, everyone needs to make money. And if sort of the augmenting your income with crappy work that you don't want to do, if you have to replace that crappy work with non-creative crappy work so that you can at least free up your creative mind and really zero in your business model will be stronger if it's narrow, if it's niche. So kind of do what you have to do to kind of narrow things. Otherwise, the have camera will shoot, that type of photographer will never be successful because they're just going to be sort of a camera operator for hire. And I agree with her. That is a really tough position to be in. So it's always about finding that spark, and how can you connect that spark to those that need your creative work.
Yeah, there was the old sayings, jack of all trades, master of none.
Yeah, exactly.
And a lot of photographers, I think, fall into that trap because they feel they have to just take every job that comes along to pay the bills, right? So,
and a lot of photographers don't build an audience either. They don't contribute to a conversation. They're not engaged in an industry or in a sort of a culture or a social segment that they're not contributing in any way. They're just they're on the peripheral of a whole bunch of different things. And photographers that are, if a photographer tells me they really want to shoot NGO work, well, my first question is, where do you volunteer? Which groups do you donate to? Which charity events do you attend and why? Which development directors do you know personally? It's all about that human element. That's where a target market comes out of, not just because you want to travel. If I hear another photographer telling me that they just want to travel and make photographs, so I'm going to throw up because it's just that's not a business. You're not meeting a business need. You want to go cool places.
You just want other people to pay you to go cool places. Yeah,
that's not a business offering.
No.
I really would like a flight, please.
No, that's called a Kickstarter or a GoFundMe campaign, isn't it?
Exactly. Well, Cindy asked a great question. So, and we in the action planner, we do walk through a lot of target market work because it's a huge part of building a great business plan.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that was a great answer. And I think it would also help, even just going back to your example of the identity section in the business action planner, right? If you narrow in exactly what your niche market, your target market, it's going to help you build your identity and your brand somewhat. So, for example, if you wanted to target very high-end brands, or brides rather, you might look at examples of very high-end brands like Tiffany's and BMW, and it might change everything about how you offer, from your packaging to your website to your photos on your website. Like it's going to influence all of that. So
yeah, couldn't agree more.
Excellent question. An excellent answer as well. And of course, we always want to hear from you and answer your questions. So be sure to head on over to thisweekinphoto.com/weddings. You can leave questions for us in the comment section on the blog post for this episode, or alternatively, you can also send us questions by emailing us at twipwed@thisweekinphoto.com. We'll also keep our eye out again for those tweets using the hashtag TWiPWed. And we're going to take a brief break here for a quick message from one of our sponsors. And after that, we're going to come back with our picks of the week. Okay, welcome back to our picks of the week section. This is our final section of the show. And this is where each week we share a photography related item that we think would benefit wedding photographers. And our picks can be anything as long as they are somehow related to photography or the business of photography. So Corwin, since you're our guest this week, I'm going to let you go first here. What's your pick for us?
All right. So my pick of the week is David Duchemin's ebook, How to Feed a Starving Artist, over at craftsmanvision.com. It's a great ebook. It's a pat on the back. It's a kick in the ass. It's exactly what a wedding photographer needs to, get a little bit more comfortable talking about money, get a little bit more comfortable talking about, the struggle of the artist and of the creative person and its connection to your life and your lifestyle. It's a great book, How to Feed a Starving Artist by David Duchemin.
Awesome. Excellent pick. Again, we'll link to that in the show notes. Well, my pick this week, it's actually, you might recognize this for those who are watching. I'm holding it up to the camera here. A little publication that the Corwin wrote. So it's a fantastic book. I've read it twice. It's called Living the Dream, Putting Your Creativity to Work and Getting Paid. So this is something you wrote a couple years ago now, right?
Yeah, 2013.
2013. It's a fantastic resource. I think it takes a lot of the information that you're going to work through in the business action planner and gets you thinking about a lot of those things and much more, right?
Yeah, it's I wrote it to sort of take the fear, anxiety, sort of the business conversation, out of the equation. I kind of call it my chaos killing book, because it just sort of helps a photographer, helps a creative person kind of look at approaching the marketplace with a little bit more confidence and keeping that momentum going, which, inspiration tends to create momentum, but sometimes the business stuff, the marketing stuff tends to pull that momentum back. And so I just sort of, Living the Dream is a book that I wrote to kind of help, again, kind of encourage and direct, that entrepreneurial side of you.
Awesome. Well, it's a great resource, and I encourage, photographers, all photographers, wedding photographers, anybody that's in, creative work, to pick up this book and give it a read. I think it'll definitely help you. So one of those ways you can work on your business for sure. And I guess with that, that's going to bring us to the end of another episode of TWiP Weddings. Once again, I want to thank our sponsors for their support. And we want to remind everybody to send in your questions for the show and share your thoughts by commenting on the blog post for this episode. So Corwin, where can everybody, what have you got coming up, and where can people go if they want to keep up with you or get the business action planner? Or where's
yeah, I mean, right now, the resources are all on businessactionplanner.com. Of course, you can creep what's going on at craftsmanvision.com with what David Duchemin and I and all of our authoring friends and photography friends are doing. And you can pretty much track me, Corwin Hiebert, on any social network out there. It's Corwin Hiebert.
Excellent. Again, we will link to all of those things in the show notes. And as always, our regular co-hosts will have links to Brian and Robert's sites on there as well. And if you're looking for me, you're going to find me over at momentsindigital.com. And I'm on most of the usual social networks as Bruce Clark, Clark with an E. And of course, be sure to visit our website at thisweekinphoto.com for this show and lots of other great shows in the TWiP network. And with that, we want to thank you again for listening to TWiP Weddings, raising the bar one wedding at a time.